Hi, welcome to Building SaaS with Python and Django. My name is Matt Lehman, and I'm the streamer for this stream, and we work on a Django application that I'm building, and I teach you some of the things that I know with some of the experience that I've gathered through years of doing Django development. We're going to jump right into the project tonight and work on some of the issues that are starting to pop up. Over the course of the last week, my customer, who happens to be my spouse, has started using the application, and nothing will show the flaws in an app faster than actual usage. So a bunch of things have already been changed and fixed, but the list is coming pretty fast and furious, and we're going to work on some of those things tonight. As a reminder for those who don't know, I'm building a homeschool application. It's for doing scheduling of homeschool stuff, which is what we do here at my household. But you following along are free to ask me anything about Python or Django or web development, and I will happily try to answer questions related to those topics. If you want to keep up with me offline or in other forums, I guess it's online, but in other non-live forums, I have an account on Twitter, and I post these videos on YouTube. So if there's anything that you didn't get to see during the stream, you can catch up on that later. I usually post next day from all the streams. And I have an account on Patreon as well. So if you find this content super useful and you want to throw a few dollars my way, I would be very grateful. I am grateful to my existing patrons of Rupert, Abdulaziz, Patrick, Mark, and Eric. Thank you for your contributions. It's really appreciated. All right, let's look at some code, jump into it, and see what we can get done today. The plan is not to work on some big feature today, but to go through a kind of a hit list of here are items that my wife has observed as she's using the app, things that are kind of little usability things that will just improve the overall feel, things that are confusing or unintuitive about it, and things that you don't notice until you have real people looking at it on a regular basis to say, hey, wait a minute, that doesn't seem right. So again, if you have questions along the way, feel free to ask, but otherwise we're going to look at some bugs and fix them. So let's start. I don't really have any particular strategy tonight except to start at the top, because that's a good enough place to go. So let's go with this one. So this issue is about making it clear where a course belongs to in a school year. And before we get too deep into it, I'll open up our models diagram that we've used a few times that's generated by Django extensions and can let you see some of the relationships on these models and get a feel for what is it we're working with here. So the issue that we're dealing with is that a school year, the primary model that a user will deal with, has a bunch of components underneath it. It's a bunch of grade levels, and each grade level can have courses, and courses can have tasks, and it forms a big tree. But there's some ambiguity that can happen between courses and the related school year. So I think it might be best to illustrate this by recreating this ourselves, and then we will fix the problem. So let's do that. So the first thing I'm going to do is fire up the local web server and bring up the web server to take a look at the app. I've got some sample data in here already, but we're going to need new data. So once the app boots up, it's taking a second here. What's going on? There it goes. Really, this is taking way longer than normal. I'm not sure what was going on there. Computers, they get confusing sometimes. Okay, let's go to the school year where the problem appeared. And the problem was this, that sometimes a course can have a shared name, a common name between different grade levels. So let's add, most of these courses that are here already have different names. So let's add one that illustrates this clearly. So I'm going to create a new course. I'm just going to call it Science. And this course will be for 2nd grade, and I'm going to intentionally leave kindergarten unchecked. So now we've got 2020 school year Science. And this is going to be actually where the problem is, right here at the top. Let's go back to the school year for a minute, and we can go down and see that science is now in our 2nd grade area. And I'm going to go to the kindergarten area and add a identically named course. Add that course. So here is the problem. The problem is that when you're on this page, and ignore this, I have something left to do there. That's a different issue. Maybe we'll get to that tonight. But when you're on this page, you can't tell where this course belongs to. What grade level is it part of? Is it part of 2nd grade or is it part of kindergarten? So what we're going to do is insert more into the breadcrumbs right here. This is what I call this pattern of having multiple arrows, breadcrumbs. I think is a common convention. And we're going to put this to be 2020 school year, arrow, kindergarten, arrow, science. So it's going to add some specificity that will make this a little bit more clear. There is an interesting wrinkle to this problem though, and that is that the way that courses are modeled, it's possible for a course to be shared. So in this context, science might be my son has a set of courses, tasks to do for his science class, and my daughter has a different set of tasks to do for her science class, but they could have a common course where they're doing the same set of tasks. So the way the modeling is done, where did that picture go, is a grade level in a course. In this notation here, both sides are dots, which that means many. So it's a many-to-many relationship. So that means it's possible, and we have to deal with the scenario where a course is associated with multiple grade levels at the same time. And in that context, I think what I'm going to do is probably show both grade levels, but put commas between them. I don't know the effect of that if like somebody has a lot of kids and a lot of grade levels and they're all in the same grade level. There's some like extremes that could really ruin this breadcrumb thing, but I think I'm going to ignore that until I get that one parent who has 10 children and puts all their kids in the same course. I suppose it's possible, but we'll see. So let's figure out where to make this change. So this is the course detail page is what this page is displaying. When it's filled out, there will be a bunch of things here. So this top section will show all of the tasks that the user is that students have to do for that course. And this put something here is a placeholder that I have for I added a concept of a course resource that my spouse requested to know like what books and workbooks and different kinds of things go with a course. So there's an empty state here, but both of those things will show up on this course page to illustrate everything that is associated to the course. So if we go to that area, which is going to be the courses views file, and find the course detail page, this is where we want to be. And it looks like I am already doing some query on grade level, but I'm only doing it for the purpose of getting the school year. So the school year because it's a many-to-many relationship, I can't do a simple foreign key and go course.gradelevel.whatever to kind of navigate up the tree. Instead, it has to be separate queries to do that. So to get the school year, you had to look up the grade level. So now that we will be pulling all of the grade levels, we might want to rework this section a little bit. I'm not sure. I'm going to think on that for a second about how we want to do this. I think we may want to do well, we can keep I guess we can keep this context. So let's do this. If we change this to be an all query. So this is a related manager, and now we're getting all of the grade levels, which was actually implied by the existing thing, but we were using first, so it didn't matter. But we're going to get back all of them and put them into a query set. So I'm going to change this to grade levels. And then we're going to change this logic here. So grade levels is now going to be a list, a sequence of items. And so if there are any of them, so this is going to cause an evaluation. So this is where the query, the actual database query will happen. And when it evaluates, it will store the results into this variable so that we can use them and iterate over them in the template. And if we know that there are grade levels, then we can safely pick any of them. So I'm going to just take the first one because all of these grade levels are connected to a course, and just by the nature of how I set up the data, they're all going to be coming from the same school year, so it doesn't really matter which one I pick. Oops, but we do need to pluralize it. All right, so I think we can go run the tests for this and make sure that this is still working. There should be a detail view. So if we look for a test course detail, and we should be able to check that, okay, I do have a test that says, is the school year in the context? So if we run this test, it should still pass, I hope. And it does, which is good. So the other thing that we want to do is to add the grade levels to the context. And so we will say context grade levels and set that equal to grade levels. I suppose we could have done this directly from the object. That's possible as well. But I don't want to. I think that having the grade levels at the top context of the view will just make it easier in the template to work with. So on the other side, let's do a second assertion here. And we want to assert that, and we want this to be a list evaluation, not just a query set. So we want to say self get context, and grade levels is the key that we're going to look for in the context. And we want that to look like a list of grade level. That's what it should be coming out in the test. And if we run that, test still passes. So we've got the view data set up now. And now it's our job to go over to the template and make this all come together. So let's go to the template, and it's the course detail template. And we have a lot of the pieces that are already in place here to make this work. So I'm going to, what am I going to do? I'm going to find the relevant spot, which is up here. Curious that I didn't realize, I guess I didn't think about it. I guess it was possible, but a course could be, is this even true? I don't think this is technically true, that a course could be not associated with a school year, but I was probably being a little defensive here. That's okay. We're going to do this. It's going to be a similar pattern of if there are any grade levels, let me see. That I have another issue. Let me think on this for a second. I have another issue to add a future constraint so that a course is always at least in one grade level. And I think the forums already kind of enforced that today, but I haven't explicitly checked that behavior. So I'm going to write a little bit defensively here because I don't want this code blowing up on anybody's actual usage in case this ever was not true. But I think it will generally be true in the future. So we need to add our breadcrumbs. And the first thing to do is to add a second arrow here, which is what this SVG icon is. And if we just save it and stop there, and then go back to our detail view, we're going to get it like a double arrow up here, I think. Yep. So we've got a double arrow. And now we need to fill in the gaps. And I want to take the name of the grade levels and join them. And I don't remember, surely there is a template tag that we can use that will join a list of things together. So let's look for that. So I'm going to search for the Django built-in template tags. And that takes us right to the right reference page. And I just don't remember if there's probably a filter that will do this to join things together, but I don't remember what it's called. We're going to look through this list, see if I can find it. It's probably join. What do you think? Join a list with a string. Well, that sounds like a winner. So this is not a list of strings, but I think what will happen, so I think this will work. So let's try this. Let's say grade levels, and we're going to use the pipe to do a filter syntax and then say join, and I want to join them with a comma space and then finish that off. But grade levels are not strings, so what does that mean? So instead, I think what's going to happen is it's going to call the stir method on the grade level, and the stir method that I've included on the model is getting the name. So is this it right here? Yeah, here's the grade level model, here's the stir method, and so it's taking the name attribute. So when that chunk of template code will execute, it calls join on all of the grade levels. They aren't strings, but it needs to have strings. So it calls stir on each grade level, and then ultimately joins that list of results together with a comma. But we are only checking for one case right now. So I'm not going to write a new unit test for this. I guess I could, but I don't generally write a bunch of test code for checking templates. If I was really exhaustive, I would do that. But I find that that's not the most productive use of my time. I want to make sure that the data is right. And then the template stuff is me evaluating. I'm kind of working through it anyway. And since I'm the only one changing these, I have pretty high confidence that my changes will be correct, because I don't really check in template changes until I'm happy with how they look. So I want to change this particular science course, though, to have both grades. And now we'll do an update and see how that looks. So now we've got school year, kindergarten, second grade, separated by commas, with science. And trying to decide if that's the way I want this to appear. Because if we observe on this page, second grade shows before kindergarten. And why is that? Let's look. Let's go back to the views file, courses. And what do we have? We've got the grade levels get filtered here as in an arbitrary way, which just means that they are going to be ordered by primary key, I guess. And how is this in the database? Let's go take a look. So we're going to find the grade levels. And so second grade has a 1 primary key, and kindergarten has a 2 primary key, and that's what's determining the order. But interestingly, in the result on that page that we were just looking at for science, it was actually the other way around, right? So we probably need to set an ordering on this, because I want it to be the first primary key. I want it to match up with the way that they're like displayed vertically, because otherwise that you would, like if you had it's not that bad if you only have 2, but again, if you have 3 or 4 grade levels that are one order, and then this label flips them around completely, I think it would be noticeable eventually. Not a big deal, but might as well correct it while we're here. So if we come down to this all query, I want to be able to say, hey, Kuatlim, sorry if I'm butchering your handle, welcome. You're new to Django, okay, and you're asking about Tailwind or Bootstrap. Good question. I guess it sort of, I would phrase it in, how comfortable are you with CSS? Like if you are, because I think the Django part of this is sort of immaterial to the decision you make about how you're doing your user interface. If you are comfortable with cascading style sheets, CSS, and you're ready to build your own pieces together yourself, then I think Tailwind is a really amazing tool. Especially Tailwind also has some really good examples, and let's look at Tailwind for just a second. So the cool part about Tailwind is like you can look at anybody's example code, and they give this example here of this chunk of stuff that's like animating right now. And if you were to take this and just like copy paste it into your own template, you would get the same thing that they show here. That's just the nature of how Tailwind works. It's cool like that. So that is nice if you have some examples to work with. And I don't use this myself, but there is a paid service that they have, which is called, I believe, Tailwind Ui, I want to say, that I've heard pretty good things about. And Tailwind Ui is a bunch of components that that the creators of Tailwind and the designers, they're like, this is Adam, the guy who made the actual CSS stuff, and this is the guy he often partners with. His name is Steve Sugar, and who is a really talented designer. They have made a bunch of pre-built components, and they kind of give you the ability to like copy paste them. And because of the way Tailwind is, you could copy and paste that starting example and then like tweak to style it to what your website will look and feel like. So that's that. If, on the other hand, you're not super comfortable with CSS, then Bootstrap is it's a good way to go, because it's got stuff that are more like components and more like a widget toolkit for you to use. So that's a cool possibility. Another aspect that might be interesting, that would also skew me a little bit more towards Bootstrap, is you could take advantage of a project called Django Crispy Forms. So let's say you're using standard HTML forms and you want to kind of quickly make a website, make some forms. Then you can use this package called Crispy Forms, which has a Bootstrap theme, if you will, and you drop in your form, and because it's already using Bootstrap, you barely have to write any HTML at all, which is kind of amazing. I have not used Crispy Forms myself on any serious project, but I do hear a lot of people that really are big fans. So I can't fully endorse it because I don't have the personal experience, but I've heard good things from people that I trust. So that's my take on Tailwind versus Bootstrap. Hopefully that's enough context that my reasoning made sense to you about why I'd pick one over the other. For my particular scenario, I do have plenty of CSS experience, and I like Tailwind's model, and it helps me to stay in my HTML without having to think about going to CSS files or without having to look up components. So Tailwind was the right choice for me. Good question. Okay, let's return to this join thing and see if we can get this ordered differently. You're welcome. So I'm going to try adding an order by onto what's here. I'm surprised, frankly, that it's not ordering in the way I want it to. I would think that it would do that, but maybe there's something about the fact that it's a related manager that it's okay with that. So hopefully, if that adding that order by hopefully did something useful where it will switch these so second grade will be in front of kindergarten now. Okay, great. So I'm going to leave it at that because I think that's the feel I want. And then again, when I edit the course and I take off second grade and make this just a kindergarten science class again, which will be the normal case. Like most courses will not be shared. Then we'll just get this clean look of school year, grade level, and then course. Okay. So let's review the diff and make sure that it's going to be sane. Commit it and move on to the next issue. So we added enough tests to make sure that the grade level data is there. I guess this is where I could extend this grade level with the ordering if I wanted to, but I don't feel strongly enough to do that. Here's the actual change in the view to be more serious about using grade levels as in the plural form. And then it was this small template tweak to get grade levels in there, join them together. I feel good about it. So we're going to add it, we're going to commit it, and we'll say add grade level to course detail page. And it fixes which issue number? That was issue 147. I add this at the end. If you're not super familiar with GitHub, I add this at the end because when I push this up, which I'll show in just a moment, it will automatically close the issue. So let's do a git push. That's what my GP shortcut is for, to push up the code. All right, if I refresh the page, 147 should be gone because we did it and it's closed. All right, now on to the next one. This was another observation, and hopefully my test data matches up with what my spouse showed, or else we'll have a harder time with this. Her observation was this. She has, well, I gotta restart the server. Huh. Oh yeah, that's a good question. Let's think on that. Let me think for a second. So how do I organize my time for my stream and side project? And yeah. Well, the last part's easy. The part about being, I am the organizer for Python Frederick, but because of the whole global pandemic thing, I haven't been doing a lot with Python Frederick, frankly. I haven't done anything really in many months on it. So that part has moved to the side. Family time is also something that I do prioritize. So like I see my kids regularly. Since we're homeschooled and everybody's home, and I've worked from home for a long time, my whole family is like, we're just used to seeing each other all during the day. So I see my kids at like lunchtime. I see them periodically. I play with them on the weekends and all that sort of stuff. So I try and give them the right amount of time, which means that my stream time, like now, and my side project time are all in the later hours of the day. I happen to be more of a night owl person, so I am comfortable writing code at midnight, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock. Well, 2 o'clock's the latest when I go to bed usually, but I will write then, and so for that, that's how I can fit in some time. A lot of people, if you if you have a job that requires you to be early to rise, then you don't have the same luxury I do without like seriously cutting into your sleep. And I would highly value sleep. I do highly value sleep. In fact, let me recommend a book. Matthew Walker, Sleep. So there's a doctor named Matthew Walker, and he wrote this book called Why We Sleep. Go read that book if you're interested in knowing why sleep is good for you. Hopefully it won't terrify you of all the things that you haven't been doing with your sleep schedule, but I think it's got some good information showing you the benefits of sleep. So even though I said I am more of a night owl person, the corollary to that is I wake up at like 9 to 9:30 in the morning. That's just how I roll. So my project time and that sort of thing is just kind of stuff that's pushed to late at night, and that's how I make it work. That hopefully that answers your question there too. All right, let's boot the app back up, get back to it, and see if I can show off the thing that she was commenting on. Yeah, I listened to the, and I would, well, you said you're not a native English speaker. I don't know if it's easier for you to read or to hear people speak, but there's quite a bit of scientific words, not jargon, well, maybe jargon, but scientific words that are about various chemicals and hormones and things. And so I did the audiobook version of Why We Sleep and found it to be quite enjoyable that way. Okay, so the issue that she observed was this. Here on the school year page, it's second grade and kindergarten. And then when she was on, well, we're backwards here, but maybe I can fix this. When she was on this view, it was in the opposite order of what she expected. So my son is my elder child. He is the one in the second grade. And my daughter is my younger child, and she is the one in kindergarten. So what my spouse was seeing is that when she viewed this particular page, it was the opposite order. So my daughter was the one at the top who was in kindergarten, and my son was the one in second grade. But that doesn't match up with the school year. We can't, unfortunately, my test data does not reflect that. So we're going to have to rely on unit tests to hopefully get this behavior right. Because what I need to do is change this schedule page. I also need to change this daily view page to enforce an order that's based on the grade levels within the school year and not based on the students themselves. So that's the change we need to make. And that's what this issue 146 is about. And you can see I've got two check items. That one is for daily and one is for weekly. So I think it's largely going to be the same change when we get down to it. But it's been a while since I've actually touched these particular views because I've been working on, these are the views that I did first. If you followed early streams of this particular app, I spent a lot of time focusing on this, and because this is the core engine for doing the school year. Like, it's the daily activity, the weekly activity. This is what my wife will spend a lot of time on when she's actually using the tool. And the building up of the school year was the secondary one, which is what I've been working on recently. All that's to say that it might take me a little bit to get in the right headspace to figure out the way to order this properly. Maybe it'll be an easy change, but I won't keep my hopes up. So let's start with the daily view because it has a simpler set of data and there might be less code to look at. So we're going to go into the views area, and the daily view is right here, this template view. And you can see that the way this works and where the area we're going to need to modify this is down here with the school year. and when it builds the schedules. So the way I've defined this, the way I'm referring to these, the data that you need to think about. In fact, let's bring up the debug mode just to make it crystal clear, is as a schedule. So all of the data, all of the tasks and courses, they all get bundled together in what I'm calling a schedule, so that these little bits and pieces, when they get displayed, is mostly rendering a schedule. So I'm waiting for the server to go up. I'm really bothered that my server is like going mega slow today. I'm not sure what's going on. There we go. So we'll look at the template context so you can see what it is. And it's a gigantic dictionary structure, I think. Yeah, you can see it here. Here's the context that I'm adding. And it's the schedules key. And so each student has a schedule for their activities, and the schedules, so that means there's a list of schedules, one schedule per student, and that schedule is a dictionary in and of itself that has two keys in it. One is the list of courses, and the other is the student. And so what I need to do is make sure that this outer list has grade level priority rather than student priority. All right, so let's see how that's done here today. I think it's going to be primarily about this loop right here of I am building the schedules page based on all of the students in the year. And frankly, that's not good. And it's not good because, well, let's imagine the most successful case of this application. The most successful case in my mind is not only does my family use it, but other families use it. And not only do other families use it, but other families use it for years and years, long enough where they have students who start and finish and are done with the app while other children in their family are still in school. In that case, the way that I've built schedules here is just flat out wrong. And it's flat out wrong because you're not going to want to delete your student from your school. The way that I've built this query of the schedule is very naive, and it's under the assumption that a student will always have a schedule for the school year. But if you have a child in your family who has graduated from secondary school, they're not going to be continuing school forever. So you might have one kid who's in 9th grade in the United States and the other is in 12th, which is our final grade if you're not familiar with how the US school system works. And that person graduates, but the 9th grader moves up to 10th grade. So we need to only display the schedules for students that are actually enrolled for that year. So that's the big flaw in the way that this is built. And so I need to determine what is the right way to do this. Is it to go by the... Yeah, let me think on this. So I might be answering my question, and the answer might be, let me just put it down here in text so we can see it. It might be to go by enrollment. But I'm not sure yet. I'm trying to think of other ways that we can do this. We want to go, yeah, I think we want to go by this notion. So, all right, so what's the enrollment? Let's make sure that modeling is understood. The enrollment is the connection between a student and a grade level. So this is what confirms that a student is even part of the school year. And that's what would permit a graduated student from not showing up on a new school year every year, even in the event that they're done with school. So we need to base it on the enrollment. We need to look and say, get me all the enrollments for this school year and order them by the grade level so that it will match up with the way that's being displayed on the actual school year page, and then loop over the students there. I think that's what's going to work. So let's hack that into place, and then if that seems right, we can make sure that the database queries are okay, because there might be some things to optimize there. And yeah, I think that's going to be the right thing. So we have the what can we say about this? We need to check that the school year. Well, let me back up. I want to make sure that the school year is already protected. So one of the important aspects that's very important about this application to me is it be safe by default for every user, which is to say that a user cannot access somebody else's school year. So I'm looking at the way that this school year is queried, and it is taking the school year, but it's making sure to filter the school year based on the user's school. So we already get the right thing. So I think that when it comes time to do the enrollments, I don't need to do this thing that's happening here of looking at all the students. Instead, I can just base it on the school year that we've already fetched, and we know that it's a safe thing for this particular user to see because we've already filtered that out. So let's say enrollments, and we want to find all of the enrollments. So enrollment.objects.filter. And I want to go by what? I want to go by enrollments that have a grade level that is in where the school year matches. So we have the school year, that's the filter we want. That'll get us every student that is enrolled. So we do that, and then there's another important piece though. We want to make sure that it's not just random enrollments, because there's an ordering that will come from enrollments, and it will be the primary key by default, but you could mess that up. Or not mess that up. Someone is not messing that up. You could reorder that differently. You could order, let's say you had 3 kids and you're enrolling them in like boom, 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 or maybe the middle and then the first and the last, and then maybe the last and first and the middle. And like there's a bunch of ways you can do that. So if we want to make sure that it matches up with the way that we're showing it on the school page, we need to make sure that we order by the grade level. That will confirm, or that will guarantee that whatever appears in the final output on this page will be the matching thing. Okay, what else do we know about this? We know that we want what? We want to have the student as well. So because the way that I'm going to do this is I'm going to loop over all of the enrollments and then check the student property. So we need to make sure that we pull that out too. So we've got this, and there's some changes that we need to make. The line is way too long right from the get-go, and we don't need this comment anymore. And we need to import the enrollment, which is in the students models. So that should be back here. So we'll go back and look at it again. And instead of this for student in this, we're going to say for enrollment in enrollments, which should be ordered by the grade level at this point. So it's the order that we expect. And you can see that it's highlighting that we didn't have the student attribute. So I'm going to say enrollment.student, and the same over here. And I think that's the right change. We can go add the test to this that will put it in the right order, and we can manipulate the test data so that primary keys don't match up. In fact, we can probably like undo these changes to check that it's in the broken state, and then kind of have a back and forth. But before we do that, let's make sure that this actually works on the app and make sure I didn't mess up the queries too badly. Although this page is already doing a lot of queries because there's a optimization that I can't really get in there. So queries are basically the same, And behaviorally on my test data, nothing changed. It's still my son first and my daughter second, but that's because the test data was. But if I made the change correctly, then even if we write the test with a different setup scenario, we should still get the order that we expect. So I know that this is a core view. So let's go to the core views file and find the daily view, test daily. Okay, and then we want to check, let's see if there's a test that's already close enough that we can just maybe manipulate the data a little bit more to check on the order. We might not find it, so it might need to be a new test. There's this schedules test, but that's only a single student with a bunch of data. So these tests are, unfortunately, because these schedules are so complicated and there's so many rules that have to go into them, are pretty complex tests. So even though I have this test right here that does check the structure of the expected schedule, I don't want to use this one because I think it's going to be, it's already a complicated test. So I'd rather set up a new test that does this. So I'm just looking for, and I don't even care about having courses in the schedule. None of that part matters. I just need to have enrollments be set up correctly with different grade levels. And I guess I'm just not seeing, a good test to latch onto. So we're going to write a new test. And this is, some of these later tests are about posting. Like this view does a lot of stuff. So let's find a place where it's mostly about the get requests, because we're going to be asserting on the context that appears in the data. And it looks like this is where maybe the split is, like it starts being post tests from this point onward. So we'll add a test right here. And we'll say test, what's this test? The test is in the schedules in grade level order. That's what we care about. Schedules are in the same order as the grade levels. Okay. Unfortunately, with this view, there's a bunch of context that we have to put together ourselves. And I need to find it from like a place that tests a happy path. And not one of these crazy ones. So apologies for making you look at all these tests that you probably don't care about. Okay. And I think for these to be, no, we don't even need any like determinism, I think. Any of these should be sufficient. No. Sorry, y'all. As I'm thinking through this, it's trying to remember all the conditions. We might want to freeze time so that it is on an actual school day, because otherwise it will be reporting back potentially nothing of value. So let's mock out, let's take a lot of, let's use this. I think that'll be a good enough place to start. Where did the test go? Goodness, too many tests. Okay, so we've got this, and that needs to mock out time zone. So we need to put time zone in there. Right there. Now put time zone. Okay, so this test isn't doing anything yet, And it's not even quite right yet, which I'll get to in a minute, but it's in the right vein. Okay, so it's passing, but we want to change some things about it. I'm assuming that my past version of myself knew that January 26th was a Sunday, so I'm just going to bump that to be a Monday because I want this school day for this daily view to be a Monday. And I'm going to delete days of week because I know that the factory by default will create a school year that runs on Monday through Friday. So I don't want to over specify stuff. So the next thing to do is have a couple of enrollments, and the enrollments will need to match to some grade levels. Remember, those are the things we're trying to do. So we want to say grade level, and that's going to be the grade level factory, and it's going to be, well, let's steal this line right here because it's already been typed out. It's the school year school, and it's going to take the school attribute. And then we're going to have a second grade level like this. And I'm going to deliberately put my enrollments in a backwards order because remember the goal is to check that the ordering is correct. So when I finally look at the results of the values that are coming out of here, the schedule should have a length of, there should be 2 students, and the students should be in the right order. So we need to make sure that that's the case. So in order to make that work, what we really want is the enrollment factory. The first enrollment, I want to actually use the second grade level so that the enrollments are switched and they don't match up, because that's the only way that we'll get the right students. So we'll say enrollment, the grade level is going to be equal to grade level 2, the second one. And then another enrollment, this will be enrollment 2, is going to be equal to the first grade level. So now, if we didn't have the order by in there, and we were just asking for the enrollments and looping through all the students, we would actually get the reversed order. And in fact, we will, I'm going to undo these changes to see the test fail. And I might go ahead and do let's see it pass first, and then I can rewind it just to show you that it would have been broken. Because sometimes you do want to write a test-driven development approach where you see it failing first, and then that gives you the confidence that when you see it pass, then you know that the test tested the right thing. So we're doing a get on it. We've got these enrollments in here, and what we want to assert that the first schedule, so let's get it out. Let's get these schedules out of here. Schedules is going to be get context schedules. So we want to assert that the first schedule, which is at schedules 0, is equal to, based on the grade level. So we actually want the second enrollment's student. Okay. And we want the second schedule that shows up in the list to be the first enrollment's student. That way we should get the ordering that matches the grade levels. It seems backwards because of how these are numbered. I wish there was a more clear way to do this, but this is, I think, the simplest thing I can devise. And it doesn't show at all. So what did I do wrong right out of the gate? So we have, all right, now here we go. Now we gotta debug. Something is not quite right with this. And let's do, just for grins. Let's print out the schedules. It might be an empty list right now. Yep, it's an empty list. So it's failing before it even gets to something. So which probably tells me that the data is set up incorrectly. I'm not getting something right about the school data. Okay. So we can step through this, and maybe that's a good exercise for people to see, is to step through some stuff. So I'm going to put the troublesome spot is right here. It's at the call to get scheduled. So I'm going to put a breakpoint here, and we're going to, I think I need to run the, well, will this work with verbose mode? Okay. So we're in the schedules list, and school year, what are you? You're a school year, so it shouldn't bomb out on that one. And what's day? Day is 127. And is there a way to check the actual, is it day.day? Nope. That's the number. Day.weekday? Day, weekday, 0. What is, okay, weekday. Did Pass Me get the calendar wrong? '27 is a Monday. Okay, the calendar in Python, 0 is Monday, I think. I think that's right, yeah. And 6 is Sunday. Okay, so we are on a Monday, that's for sure. So we can see where we are. It should get past this. And I would think it would get past this, because the answer to school year runs on day. Yeah, it got past that. So what it's failing on is this, I guess there's no enrollments that come out of here. So okay, so what is enrollments? Is the enrollments empty? It's an empty query set. Why is that? Oh, I see. Okay, I got it. The enrollment is wrong because I gave it a grade level here. It needs to be based on the school year. All I'm saying here is that the grade level, it has a common school. That's incorrect. So each one of these actually put in separate school years. And it might even be worse than that. It might, like, I still don't know why it's 0, but I would expect at least 1. But maybe I'm wrong on that too. So let's actually store this school year and then change this to be school year. Okay. So it's just the way the factory system was working. All right, so if I rerun the test now, what happens? We're back in I didn't take out the debug statement, so we'll keep going. And we'll say enrollments. What are you this time? All right, now you're the enrollments that I expect. In the order that I expect. I think this test will just pass. Oh, okay, it won't pass because I wrote the assertions wrong. But we're on the right track now. So let's get rid of the PDB because we aren't going to need to go into the debugger again. But this was wrong because this is actually a dictionary. So if we want to get the student out, we need to do the key into the student. But otherwise, I think it'll be correct. Great, it is. Okay. So let's pause there for a minute because I think that's the whole daily view. And the weekly will be more of the same, but it might be slightly varied. I don't remember. And yeah, we already looked a little bit at the queries, so I trust that that's reasonable. This test, again, this test is quite a bit going on, which I'm not crazy about. But let's talk through why I had to do some of the things I had to do. I had to freeze the time because if I ran this test on the weekend, for example, then the schedule may be returning emptiness when it shouldn't be. So I wanted to be deterministic of like representative of this is on a weekday, so it has real data to look at. In this case, it might not have mattered because I think it would just return an empty list of course tasks to do. But maybe that was still worth it. Maybe not though. Now I'm talking out loud. You all are my rubber ducks, I guess, if you will. Maybe it's worth getting rid of. It's hard to verify because this is a Wednesday, but I think it's the right call that if we delete all of this mocking stuff and delete all of that business and delete these date things, I think we can really condense this down to a much simpler set of code. Right. Okay. That's good because, again, I don't really care about what's in the schedule itself, just that the grade level is in the right order. So now this test tells, I think, a cleaner story. It's still a little bit confusing because the numbering gets backwards here. But I think that future me could determine that based on the doc string tells me that they have to be in the right order. So what I'm going to read through if I came back to this would be, let me look at these grade levels and make sure that the order is there. And then I'd see that this is reversed on the enrollments. So I would understand why the enrollments are backwards in the assertions. So that's the test. And gosh, just taking out that time stuff made it really way cleaner. It's crazy. Okay, and then here's the code change. The other side benefit of this that was just kind of a side effect is that when somebody graduates and is no longer used by the school desk, they won't appear on a school year that they're not part of. Now it's going to be based on the actual enrollments. And we didn't suffer any extra queries because we did a select related on here. So there's one query for all of this, which is what we want, rather than one query for the enrollments plus one query for every student. That's why we have the select related call on there. And then the key element is we have the order by of the grade level. So that's all good news. Okay, let's go make the same kind of change for the weekly view. And let's keep the test file up and the same thing, because I might actually want to copy this test file because I think it's going to be so shockingly similar for this level of the schedule. Like the schedules between the daily view and the weekly view are quite different when you get down to like, it's a big gigantic table of data for the weekly view. But at the highest level of what is the list order, none of that extra stuff is needed. So this test will probably be pretty close to what we want. And same story with this part. In fact, I'm going to just copy it as we move on to the next section, because I think there's even another method named getSchedules in the weekly view. So yeah, it's the app view, but it's one and the same. So the same kind of story in getSchedules is the same loop, but instead we'll do enrollment and delete this line and enrollment.student. Okay, that might be even easier, which is cool. Okay, so there's the change there. We are going to make sure that the schedules are in grade level order. So I'm going to yank that text, and we're going to go up to the app view, which is this big guy up here. Okay, I think all of these are, the difference is there's no posting on this test case, I think. This is an extremely similar test. Right down to the name of schedules. In fact, it might be an identical test aside from the reverse name. If I do this and change it to app, that might be it. Test passed. If I undo these changes for a second, test failed. They're in the wrong order or something. Oh, there's no enrollment at all. Okay. Whole different issue. Okay. So that one was a nice easy win after making the first change. And it really does tell the exact same story, which is maybe a code smell that I should refactor this view, these two views, to have the common logic. So let me think on that for a minute, because I want to make sure I don't miss any opportunity here. So what would this refactored thing be? Because this is a query that is a little bit complicated. So we might want to say where would I put this logic if not here? So what am I really trying to get in building these schedules? What I'm trying to get is a list of students, right? And I get the list of students by the school year. So the input into this method that really matters is a particular school year, and the output is a list of students for that school year. And the fact that there's an enrollment is kind of immaterial, right? So perhaps what I should do is wrap this up into a method on the model, on a model, to decide how to get students. So where would that live? There's a couple of answers. And I have a coworker who is actually his name is James Bennett. He's a very well-known Django developer. And I was reading one of his articles literally today about where to put some of the business logic stuff. And he argues very strongly in favor of using models and managers to put in your business logic. And he made a point about putting, when you need to do certain kinds of method operations, of using a manager instead of a class method. And I'm not clear why. I'm going to have to ask him about that. Tonight I'm going to put it on a class method because I don't know the context and it doesn't make a lot of extra sense to me to do that. But I'm sure James can convince me otherwise in the future, and then I can just change my behavior. But for tonight, we're going to try and take this chunk of logic here and do a little bit of a refactor to clean this up. Because if you look at this, the enrollment is just kind of coming along for the ride. And it's coming along for the ride just so that we can get the students out of here. So if we can make the students always come out consistently in the order of the grade levels, then that could be used in other places. I think it would be a nice change. Let's go to the students models file. And let's go to the student model, which I think is here. Yeah. And so I already have some methods on here for various things. A lot of these are instance methods though. And maybe that's why my coworker was advocating for manager methods, because managers are intended to be about managing instances of that type, whereas the regular methods on this are kind of for individual instances. I don't know. I'm still torn. Still torn enough that I'm going to write this one as a class method, and he can say, that was silly, you shouldn't have done that in the future. Okay. So question is where to put a class method. I'm going to put it, I guess, up here, because it's kind of like a constructor object for particular students. So like, give me the students by this school year. So we want to say class method, and I want us to call this get students, and I'll say get students for. I might regret this later, but that's okay for now. We'll say class and school year. And I'm not going to let that be an optional school year. I'm going to expect it to be an actual school year. So that's a good constraint, so that we don't have to deal with a none condition. Although if we did have none, we could say if school year is none, return an empty list. I'm not going to do that though, because we don't need it. So what we want here is this chunk over here, the enrollments, and we're going to put it right there. And we'll say, we'll return a list comprehension, and we're going to say enrollment .student for enrollment in enrollments. All right. And we know that we're going to test if this refactoring is right, because we still have a unit test. So we're operating in like a safe space now, which is the great part about having really solid unit test coverage, because it's going to check this model method, because I'm about to use it right here. Instead of doing this chunk of code, which for the moment I'll just comment out, we'll say for student in student dot get students for school year, which is the data that we have. And well, we need to import the student model, which that's okay. And now we got rid of the enrollment concept. We keep that out of here. And we come up to this area. And for the time being, we're going to add the student. All right, now let's rerun. Well, first let's find, was I updating the app view or the daily view? Good question. I was updating the app view. So this is the right test. Let's check, make sure our test is still passing. And it is. Okay, cool. So that lets us get rid of all of this. And we can get to go to the other enrollment section. And we can do the same thing. We can say student in student dot get students for school year. And then we kill that enrollment and make sure we put the colon on there. And we can delete enrollment in both of those places, which has another nice side effect on it, is that what we end up seeing outside of or in this little chunk of code is not an extra dot access. We're just talking about students. The concept of enrollments has been abstracted away, buried inside of the student's app, which I think is actually a good thing, because the notion of an enrollment is not something that I want to have to deal with very commonly. It does feel like an implementation detail of how is a student connected to a school year. So if you can just ask the model of, hey, give me all the students for this school year, then that feels like a very healthy way to go. So I think now that we've done that, the enrollment model is no longer needed. And let's run all of the tests in this file to make sure that both the tests we added are passing. And they're not. Oh, this is I broke a different test. Okay. So we need to make sure that maybe there's some security aspect that I broke. So this is why we write these tests, to make sure I'm staying honest here. Tests this school year is for the user only. Okay, I think we can get rid of this. Test school year for user only. Is this the one that broke? Yep. Okay. There are now... All right, what did I switch? Okay, when I was doing this initially, I was basing, like if we look at the diff, we look at the for loop that I'm replacing, I was basing this on what students are part of the school, which is a fair thing to ask, or a fair way to look at the problem space. Because I was making the assumption of a user should only be able to ask about students that are in their school. But if you recall me mentioning earlier, when we access this school year, it's a school year that belongs to the school. And so really, I think this is really highlighting a problem that's more in my actual data factories than anything, because the enrollment that is created, an enrollment doesn't have to be connected to a school in the right way. That's not making enough sense. Sorry, ignore that part for a minute. But really what's happening is I created a student factory up here, and I expect, well, what do I expect? Let's give us more space. So they expect to see a schedule, but there was no schedule. And this is where I'm kicking myself. I complained about this on Twitter, or I didn't complain. I was commenting on Twitter and saying, like, I got bit a few months ago by writing a test where I didn't write a documentation string, and then I came back to it and the test name wasn't helpful enough to help me figure out what I was doing. That's kind of happening again. So I think the notion of this test is it's supposed to be checking that the student belongs to the school and nothing else. But I'm having trouble. There's like two school year factories here. Like, I don't know what's going on with that. Test the school year for user only. Okay, so, oh, I see. So this school year factory, okay, this test is complicated again by the fact that we have to freeze time to know that this is going to be a real schedule that is for a real school day. So it has to freeze time, which means it has to build school year factories based on a particular time. I think there are ways that I can make that better in the future using a factory trait. But I'm not sure. To make this test shorter and more readable, because like the test, this right here is adding basically no value. It's the same date and time. I'm just making a school year that happens to be bounded on either side by this date. Because if I freeze this time to forever be 2021-24, and school year factories by default are based on the current day, then this is guaranteed to eventually fail because the school year is not for all time. I don't know why I made one only run on a particular day of the week either. That also doesn't make sense to me. So the 24th is a Friday, because we saw earlier the 26th was definitely a Sunday. But again, if the school year factory, like, this test doesn't care about this. In fact, if we wanted to test this for real, this test was actually wrong, because it should be testing that the school runs on the same thing and it's not pulling from this factory. The big thing that it's trying to distinguish is that this school year factory doesn't have, is part of a different school, because it's not an attribute that's here. Like, you can see this school year factory has a school, and this other one doesn't. So yeah, that's how the test is supposed to work. It's saying, like, pull from this one or pull from this one instead of this one. That's what it's really trying to say. But I think I wrote it really poorly looking at it now. Okay, so how can we do this in the right way? I think to do this in the right way, what we really need to say is, in order to be shown on a school year, as I said, this student could be graduated for all we know. So it's not good enough to say you just have a student and that you are going to show up. Really what we want to say is that you have an enrollment and in that particular school year. And so we want to get this particular school year to show that it's just this one. And we want the enrollment factory to have a grade level of grade level school year match that school year. That's what we really care about. And that's the side effect of the enrollment factory, is that it'll create a student. And so this line is no longer needed. Okay. All right, well, that was unanticipated, but we fixed it. Although it gives me pause now. I kind of like want to think about if I can make a cleaner way to create school years based on a particular date, because this is terrible. This, like, that's just complete nonsense. I'd like to be able to say, like, here's a reference date and go. The other thing I want to do is, I'm pretty sure these lines don't matter. So let's do that. And it's almost like I'm actually testing for the negative. So I think the test might just be wrong in general if it's trying to test what it says it's testing. So I think I want to think about this and give it a better documentation string, which is to say, a user may only access their school year. So this is supposed to be, if we're looking at this test, like, we're looking at the daily view. Let's go back to the daily view. I think what this is trying to test is this condition right here. We're trying to check that the school year is associated with your school. And what I was attempting to do is make 2 school years, so there's 2 different options. I think I ran into this because I initially had a failure that when my local testing, where I wasn't putting in this condition, this constraint, and so I was getting 2 school years back when I did this comparison. So it's good to have this in here, but really I need to make this cleaner. So it's like, this one is just based off of this Friday, a school year that is that includes this Friday, and a school year that includes the Friday as well, and one has a school and one doesn't. That's really what the test is about. That will tell a much better story. I think this is getting closer to telling that story, but it's still not quite there yet. So let's go look briefly at Factory Boy and see if we can make a version of this that is cleaner. And if we can't, I'm only going to spend a couple minutes on it, and if it doesn't work out, then it doesn't work out. So the way that you can do kind of custom things with Factory Boy, like build out patterns of stuff, is with something called traits. And I mean, there's a lot of ways to build things with Factory Boy, but traits are a powerful way to do things. So you can see here, but I don't know that you can pass in a value for a trait. That's what I'm not sure of. Because a trait is like saying, here's a version of this thing that I want to test with. And so what I would be looking for in this example is saying, here is a version of a school year that happens to have date ranges that have been adjusted based on a date that I give you. But I don't know that it's going to let me do that. And I'm looking if that's true or not. Because you can see traits are built by using this params second class. And it's like you create this trait object of shipped. And then they give this example of you can pass in shipped equal true here. But I don't think I can just say, because I want to say like, the thing that I'm trying to go for that might make this read nicer is if I could do something like school year factory and then say, I don't know, relative to Friday. Something along those lines. Like if I had a trait like this that could create the appropriate time range, then a bunch of these factories, like if you look at this file, it's full of these school year factories that are constantly adjusting start date and end date, because school years, for most of these tests to be valid, have to be the active school year, which is why I have to freeze time and like, well, I have to do all this extra stuff, all to get something cleaner. But I don't think I can do that with these traits. Maybe it's a functionality. Yep, a trait is toggled by a single Boolean value. So I think I'm out of luck. What else can I do? I think there is another way that I could make this better. The other way I can make this better is to use date util. So in this example, I am freezing the time zone. I'm mocking time zone. And then I am setting its local date to return. Do I still have to do that? I think I still might have to freeze time zone, but I might be able to get rid of this nonsense and rely on the defaults. And I'm going to do that by setting the date to use relative delta from date util. I think that'll work. And if it does, that'll be a really great thing that I won't bore all you with it, but I'll probably go through and clean up these tests, because I think you saw it earlier, like dramatically shrunk down the number of lines of tests. And I think there would be another nice benefit is like when I first came to this test, it was hard to even see which parts of the test setup, which is what this top section is, was doing. So how can we make this better? We can say, we can build a date, and we might have to change the name of the mock so that because I think we're shadowing the actual time zone. I'm importing that from the top right here. Okay, so we want to keep that for this particular test. Let's come back with the test. And we're going to change this to mock time zone. And I expect, we're now more than 90 days past January. So this test should now fail, because what I'm doing is I'm saying that the name of the thing to mock out is mock time zone. So when I'm trying to set timezone.localDate.return value, what I'm really doing is setting at the real module that's imported at the top here, and that's not going to work. And it says, I don't know what you're talking about. This is something totally different. Okay, so I can get it back to a working state by changing this one thing to be mock time zone. So we're back to a good test. So keep that in mind. Like as you're tweaking your test, if you had a working test, you want to keep it working. So if you can make little changes that are going to do that, then do that. So what do I want to do? I want to take a local date and I want to make it into a Monday. And that as long as the Monday is within the school year, then I think this is going to do the right thing. So if I say that Friday, or in fact, yeah, we can make it Friday. Why not? Friday is equal to time zone, the real time zone now, time zone local date. So that's going to take today, Wednesday, August 19th, and we're going to add relative delta onto it. And we're going to say the day, well, this is probably not going to need to get out the documentation for relative delta, but it's going to be something like weekday of Friday. I don't know what that's going to look like. FR, something like this. Let's go to the docs. Relative delta is this really cool aspect of the date util module. If you've not used date util, get to know it. It's pretty awesome. And they've got some decent examples here. So let's find some stuff that might make sense of this. Next week, I'm looking for one that specifically monkeys with, hey, look at this, next Friday. This is exactly what we're looking for. Apparently there's two different ways to do this. You can either say weekday Friday, like I was planning to do. For some reason I thought it was a function, so I got that part wrong. But I was pretty darn close. So let's get rid of Friday. And where does this stuff import from? I think it's importing from the same relative delta module. The author gives us examples with an import star. I don't like doing that. So I'm going to import from the module, which means I have to manage this a little bit more carefully, but that's okay. So we're going to say relative delta, here it is. So I'm already using Monday and Sunday, so let's just add Friday to the list. Because why not? Although this is going to alphabetize it, so actually Friday goes here, I guess. Order of the days of the week, be darned. Okay. And then come down here. So now we have this real test. So this now we can do, is now used anywhere else? I don't think it is. Now is used there. Nope, not in this test. Okay, so we really just want the date. So let's put in Friday. Yeah. I don't know why I didn't put Friday to begin with. Whatever. So in theory, these two lines are now totally obsolete. Okay? So this test should still pass. And it does. But here's the nice part. The school year factory, which I didn't show you, but I can really quickly, says to make a school year based on today minus a few days and plus like a year. So it's a really big school year, but it doesn't matter. I just wanted to have something sort of safe. So it's already anchored to a good time window. So the nice part is if I have picked a date that is from today, but only 1 week in the future, that's going to fall inside of the range that is defined by the factory by default. So I can do this. I can take these and I can just delete them. So now I have a school year factory that's just this. And just this. So all of this extra stuff just went away. We still had to mock the time zone. Okay, no biggie. And, we still have to create some stuff. But if I did this right, yeah, it works. It ran really slowly, though. That's curious. Why is it running so slowly? Apparently my kernel is going crazy, doing stuff. So it may have nothing to do with that test run. Because normally my tests do not run nearly that slowly. So, all right, let's get down to a PyTest thing then. So I'm running PyTest to do testing. And we can say, we can pass it an extra flag that does time checking. So if I just, for some reason, like really messed up my tests, then we can see the behavior of the worst behaving test. Let's do that. Let's what's the command that we want? I think it's just PyTest, and then we use a flag called durations, and durations will print out the slowest test that you have. So I'm going to say durations of 10 and run it. And so if that one test was going really slowly for some reason, I don't think it is. I don't know what was going on. Yeah, that was just a circumstance of what happened. But this is a really powerful tool. Like if you have a big test suite, if you're at an employer, I've used this at my own employer, found really slowly behaving tests that are causing your continuous integration server to go way slower than it should be, then adding durations to your PyTest run can just give you data that you can go in the logs and say like, hey, for some reason this test is taking 2 minutes. Why is it taking 2 minutes when all of our other tests take half a second? And if you can answer those questions and save time off continuous integration, you could really make your lives better at work if you have that kind of setup. Okay, so the test pass. We got a much cleaner test out of this. School year factory is now way shorter. I think it tells a way better story that I am creating a school year factory, and the one that I named and do an enrollment for is the one that's accessible, which tells me that this check down here of that the school matches the user's school year is the right one, and so that we actually get a schedule. So that makes that test pass. All right, I didn't expect to go down on that long tangent, but that's what we did. So now I've got Friday in there. We've got this test, this kind of straight line symbol test. We cleaned up this other test to, like, look at the change on that. All that vertical space is condensed into like, all these 4 lines went down to 1. These 4 lines went down to 1. I'm very pleased with that kind of change. And then the actual app code is, we've got this model method now that gets the students and does the enrollments. Oh, good thing. This is why I review my own diffs, and I don't do pull requests on this project because it's just me. But I do try and like look back at my diff for the purpose of seeing like, did I get everything? Did I do it right? Did I miss anything? Did I leave any print statements in there or debug or whatever? And here's an example where I forgot a doc string. So let's come back up here. And we'll say get all the enrolled students for the school year. Now, there is no check here that on the access control. Like if I have code that calls it, which I do in this view code, by the time that this school year, get students for school year is called, I am assuming that I've already made sure that this user is allowed to access this school year. Because this thing will give you any students. So if some other view was not checking on the school year that it belonged to the user, then that would be bad news. But at the model level, none of that access control stuff is a factor. So now we've got the documentation string added. It's a fairly straightforward method. It's ordered by grade level, which is what we care about, which was the original problem. And we're done. I like that we've got out of this 2 clean tests, 1 cleaned up test, and then the actual changes to the view file were extremely minimal. In fact, it moved it in a better direction. It went from being very explicit about what it was querying to being a little bit closer to domain driven. It's one model talking to another model. So it's more about the domain interaction between those 2 models, which is a good a step in the right direction. And then the class method that got added here, it was a simplistic 2-line, well, like it black converted into multiple lines, but essentially 2 statements that needed to be executed in order to put that method together. So that's pretty cool. Okay, so one final check that we can do, I'm pretty positive it'll still be 100, but we'll run the test with coverage to make sure that that new model method is covered. I'm certain that it is, but it's still nice to see it before I get an angry email from GitHub that says you lost coverage. And I did. So where did we lose it? Students 113. 113. Oh, this one I think was a tough one to get. Oh, would you look at that? So this isn't like, I have written this code now in a way where this path never gets called. Okay. So I guess we need one more test. And that test is for the scenario that I talked about, where a user has 2 students, one has graduated, one has not, and they're still using the application. So let's do that. Should I do it as a view test, or maybe I should just write a model test to prove it? Because I think that should be sufficient. Yeah, I don't think I need to make a whole other view test. That would be nice and slow. So let's make one more test. Okay, students test models. And then we're done with this file. And what do we have here? We've got this test student class. It's got a bunch of things in it. And is there any get courses test in here? There is. There's only one test. Let's see. Test get courses no enrollment. Oops. Course says no enrollment. And then I'm going to, like I said, I'm going to be better about adding doc strings to things. So we're going to say an unenrolled student has no courses for a school year. Okay. And so I want to make, what do I want? I just need a school year and I need a student. And I think those things can be totally disconnected and it will hit that line. So we want a student from a student factory. And we want a school year from a school year factory. And because I'm giving no parameters to either, no arguments to either of them, that means that they'll be completely unconnected. They won't have a common school. common user, so nothing. So it should definitely return empty on this form. So if we say courses and student get courses and pass in the school year, then we can assert that the courses will be an empty list. And it is. So now if we run make coverage again, we should have covered that last line. And you might think it's a little obsessive of me to get 100% coverage. You're not wrong. The reason that I'm doing it, though, is merited, I would say. I am striving for 100% coverage because I am the only one working on this application. And so if something goes wrong and I have to support people in the future, then that's on me. So I try and put in a strong safety net for myself to make sure that that the app is as stable as it can be. And if that means writing 100% coverage to test every aspect of it, then that's what I'm going to do, because it might make me a little slow out of the gate, but I have a feeling over the long haul that it's going to be the right thing for me. Okay, so now we have a new test to add to the mix. And now I think we're really done for real this time. So we wrote all that extra test code to do what? To make sure that the schedule pages that we saw are ordered by grade level instead of student. And we dealt with all of the fallout from that change. Schedules are ordered by grade level. This is the ultimate thing that we're fixing here. And that fixes, I think it's number 146. Is that right? Yep, 146. We got both the daily and the weekly view. So that was, I like having checklists because it helps remind you to do certain aspects. And so those are those parts. So we can commit it and push that up. And I think that brings us, you can see GitHub automatically closed it. I think that brings us to a good stopping spot for the evening. We did a couple of issues tonight, and a lot of the streams in the future will be similar stuff. Like there's the big design changes that I've implemented are set in place, and the core elements of this application are not permanently locked down, but they're at least locked down for a first iteration, where we're at now a stage where I am going to need feedback before I can make big changes if I need to. So we're going to continue to work on these kind of polishing issues, and then as my spouse does more planning, there will be more kinds of aspects that come out of that. Maybe more reports that are needed, or new functionality that just we haven't even talked about yet, that she just wanted to get a first version in place that she could use and then start to add on. So that's kind of the direction that we're going. The other bit that I still want to do is return to the onboarding process. So we were before I shifted gears and started working on feedback, we were working on building out the onboarding steps for if a new person signs up for the application, what is their experience going to be like? What is the path to get them positioned for a successful start? And I built out some of that. We're going to have to revisit a bunch of those parts because I think some things have changed, and some of that flow is probably broken at this stage. But those are things that I need to get in place. Because ultimately, the plan is this: the application is out there. My spouse will eventually start using it, but I think it will get robust enough and mature enough for her use and then shift to where I can start seeking out other users and going out to various homeschool communities. I know some myself, and I have other family members that do homeschooling stuff. So trying to get other interested parties to start looking at it because I think that's where this could get even more interesting for me. Is like I do want to make a useful tool for my family, but I would love to make a useful service for a community as well. So that is like the long-term vision, but we're not there yet. We're still kind of like early days, even though I've been working on this for many months at this point. That I think wraps us up for the evening. If you enjoy this, give me a like or follow or whatever it is, depending on if you're watching from Twitch or YouTube. That would be greatly appreciated. If you want to keep up with me, I am on Twitter. I am on GitHub. I am on Patreon, all the same handle as MB Lehman. So if you want to connect with me there, you're welcome to do that. There is a Discord link below for a community that I've got built there. It's a very small group and just occasional chats that happen there. But if you have questions that you want to ask me that don't fit in a tweet, or you didn't have time to do the chat today, you're welcome to do that there. So thank you for your time and have a good one. Take care.